Welcome back to KTN's Morning Express. It's now time for Person of Interest. And if you've never watched this segment before, well, you're in luck because you're just in time for it. This morning we have Elizabeth Ongoro, nominated senator. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
It's been very hard to track you down. You've been busy.
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 With a lot of things, politics and Senate. Though now we are on recess.
Right.
Yeah.
And so let's begin with politics and specifically party politics. And you know, we've done this story before, that race to find the next representative for the Homa Bay senatorial seat. I just want to find out what your thoughts and opinions are on that. We're asking this morning our viewers to tell us what the solution to ODM's electoral problems would be. Do you think they're electoral problems?
Honestly, I don't think we have any electoral problems. What we have in ODM are political problems that express themselves in various ways, and you see them manifesting in different formats. The last is what we just experienced. What we have in Homa Bay is a deep political problem which has infiltrated many members and now has found its way even into our delegates. Mm-hmm. So it's not an electoral problem, it's a political problem, but I can assure you, as ODM, we are on top of things. We suspected it, we were expecting a manifestation, and with what we have already gotten, we are back to the drawing board now to really tackle the real issues.
Okay, so when you say political problem, what exactly does that mean? Because it sounds a bit
political
vague.
Problem is not vague. We are in a political competition, and our competitors have somehow found a way of getting their key people, their appointment, infiltrate and still masquerade as ODM members. That is the political problem that we have. And that is why, as ODM, we're after now the new officials were put in place during the last delegates meeting. We are pushing to have grassroots elections so that we start with fresh delegates right from the ward to the constituencies and the counties.
Okay, so the first word from you is that this is a political problem, not an electoral problem.
No.
But I just want to bring our viewers up to speed, just in case you've missed that story. It's a race to find the next Homa Bay senator, which is very much in motion. And these are the pictures that we got from Homa Bay yesterday. And as Kisumu, our Nyanza, actually, reporter Victor Ogale has those details for us. And this is what went down yesterday. Paris.
For the forthcoming senatorial by-election. All was well until 11 a.m. Some delegates were not happy. Apparently, some constituencies were missing from the list.
Leo wapigi kura, and we are demanding election board walete list every constituency wanajua vile walichaguliana. That is my word. But the problem we are having, some MPs went and sat down, brought their people, and we will not accept.
Soon after, ODM officials on the ground called off the exercise. The aspirants had sought refuge inside the Homa Bay County Assembly buildings, and one by one they left the premises in protest. Former ODM National Electoral Board Chairman Philip Okundi was the first to condemn the incident.
The only thing that I think needed to be really streamlined is this allowing room for complaints to arise before you do elections, that the lists are different.
And even up to yesterday, I cautioned the board that there is a plan to stop, to cause chaos, create confusion, and stop the exercise from being done.
The delegates of the party we are talking about were delegates from 2008. And really from that time, so many delegates died. New constituencies have been created. A constituency like Homa Bay Town constituency has no delegates.
That is something that the party must think very, very seriously about. The party must listen to what the persons who are the voters on the ground are saying.
Hilary Alila, who was also to seek an ODM nomination ticket, has opted to contest in the by-election as an independent candidate. An exercise that began peacefully early in the morning here at the Homa Bay County Assembly ended up in total shambles, leaving the delegates with no clear indication as to whether this exercise will be repeated again or as to whether the ODM party is going to issue a particular candidate with a certificate. Victor Ogale, KTN in the county of Homa Bay.
Now, I know that you're a bit wary of discussing or getting into more details with that because it's something that's ongoing at the moment.
Yeah. Just this morning, we have called all our candidates to ODM headquarters. In fact, from this interview, I'm going to join them. Mm-hmm. I want to assure our supporters that we are on top of things. The candidates are going to have a meeting with the party's leadership. We will have a candidate. We tried the delegate system for the first time, and that is also provided for in our constitution. Yeah. Because of the intrigues in Homa Bay and because of the time constraint, we decided to give it a try for the first time and see how the delegate system would work. And we have tried with a lot of challenges, and we have seen how it has gone. But I must say that a lot of political intrigues, which I may not be able to discuss in detail right now, have come into play because we have so many people who have ended up with so many different lists. Mm-hmm. We don't know from where, because we only have one delegates list. And as you are aware, the late Senator Kajwang was the chair of Homa Bay County. After his death, then that position, according to our constitution, is supposed to be assumed by his deputy, who is Honorable Monica Amolo. And she has the list. Suddenly, her list was then contested, and there were 2 or 3 other lists, which we are going to investigate to find out how and where they came from. But that is why I keep saying that this is a political problem, not an electoral problem. We had everything in place. We had the delegates list. Our elections board was on the ground, and everything was fine. In fact, I was following the proceedings. They even had prayers, and suddenly, some people just started, from nowhere, insisting that some people were not in, I don't know which list they were making reference to. But again, that is now an internal affair which we are going to discuss. You also know that our constitution also provides, there's even a provision of giving a direct nomination in such extreme political situations. And that is why I keep referring to it as a political problem. Having said that, I want to state that you are aware also that several other constituencies were created after our elections, and we have not had any other elections. And all these confusing scenarios came into play, and a lot of political interests. But we are going to have a candidate, and we are going to have a very good process. And I can assure you that ODM is going to clinch.
Okay.
That's it.
I mean, listening to you speak right now, you have your eye on the prize, all your facts are on your fingertips, which is interesting because I read an article which was written just last year which referred to you as a relatively young person in politics. Would you say that this is the person you are now?
I don't know what anybody would mean by young, but well, I don't think politics really, experience in politics refers to the number of years somebody, okay, the number of years has a bearing, but I don't think the number of years really is the only factor that is considered when you're talking of political maturity or the way somebody does or handles their political issues. Mm-hmm. I think in politics, you can go through certain experiences that force you into political maturity. And I think I have had more than my fair share of those kind of experiences. But apart from that, let me just say that my entry into politics was also a baptism of fire of sorts, because the constituency of my entry was Kasarani. You are aware, at that time, it was the second most populous in the country.
Right.
And rated as one of the most volatile. I think it was occupying position #1 countrywide. And so for that kind of entry in that kind of political scenario, and being the first woman to be elected in that constituency, that process forced me to mature politically in so many ways and to handle so many things that needed one to draw from a whole range of experiences and everything that really just then packaged me into what I am today.
Okay, I mean, I know you're alluding to that, but for a while there, it appeared that you just could not catch a break. It was one thing after the other, and here you are juggling being an MP, as you've mentioned, and at the same time, you were an assistant minister. So what are some of the key things you would say were the biggest lessons for you during that time in the last parliament?
In the last parliament, one of the key things that I learned to tackle were, one, to balance between political interest and my position as an assistant minister, at the same time finding the rightful, just how to handle the political class in and out of parliament. That really was a challenge, because for me I was a first-time MP, and I had not been in politics before. It was my first attempt. I kind of had to realize that what goes on in parliament, you have to very quickly shed it off. Immediately you are out, and know how to then fit into another role of being part of the government. At that time, we were also coalition members. And then quickly, again, rebrand yourself on some political stage in a rally somewhere. And then know again how to balance all your political statements with everything else that you are doing. But having said that, let me just say this. Politics is very fluid. It is not static. And one of the most interesting things is that I think I was a slow learner, because sometimes you would think you are reading from the same script, when after some meeting during the day, some other meeting took place at night where people actually reconciled, and there's a different political position altogether. And if you have not really brought yourself up to speed, then you'll be reading from a different script, and you find yourself very irrelevant.
Did you at any one point feel overwhelmed? Because you're describing a situation to me which sounds very scary.
Quite scary to somebody who has not been there, but I wasn't overwhelmed at all, because my experiences before I got into politics, I was dealing with companies that were labor intensive, and dealing with so many other issues that I think quite prepared me for the political scenario. It wasn't very, very different. But let me say, one of the breaking points was the last nomination process, 2012, when I did not end up with my nomination certificate.
Was that painful for you?
It was very, very painful. I think it was my lowest political moment, because I gave it my all, and it was a very difficult time for me, because I think I was also going through it. Part of that period, I was also heavy with child, and then I did campaign for about 3 years, and I ended up very satisfied in the last 2 months, having known that everybody else had dropped out of the race, and so I was satisfied. I was actually now preparing for the general election, only to realize that suddenly something else came into play that had never been there before, called regional balancing.
Right.
And I didn't see it coming. It came as a shocker. It really completely shook me, and I almost lost it.
Did you feel betrayed?
Of course, I did feel betrayed. But I quickly, in politics and in life, you have to find a way of not mourning too much, because then that only deals with you. And in politics, I think there's no time for that. I'm actually writing a book. It's I'm going to brand it, No Time for Tears. In politics, there's no time for tears, really. You have to learn to shed, everything off, wake up and, brush yourself and just keep moving, because nobody else will have time for you anyway. If you step aside and go into lamentations, then you just become irrelevant. People will just refer to your case as a case study or an example. So it was really, really painful, but I quickly had to deal with it. Went out of my way to campaign for our party candidate, who was given the nomination certificate, and here I am.
Okay, but then that has obviously been revived now, because the candidate you're talking about, Margaret Ongoro, as recently as last week, said that she has jumped ship to TNA now. Is that really like, a twist, because it was you were stabbed in the back and now here she is, she's jumped ship? Is that a twist after the stab in the back?
I don't want to comment about another person's political strategy. And as I said before, politics is fluid. And I find nothing wrong with people changing parties. What I find wrong is not being true to yourself. If I decide to change parties, at least I will tell the true story. I will say that I find the other party more attractive, for example. I will say that I feel that I stand better chances in this other party. I will say that political intrigues and so many things have changed in the political scenario, and I feel that I'm more comfortable in this party. I will not brand. It's like, staying in a house for so many years, and then suddenly when you move out, you start saying all the bad names. Really describing that house in all the negative adjectives that you can get.
Yeah.
I just find it hypocritical. I don't find it true. I find that, once you're not true to yourself, you cannot true to any other cause. And while I don't want to comment about that extensively, I want to say this. In that political scenario, I was the victim. The only thing that makes me laugh is when somebody who actually is supposed to be wiping my tears pretends to have been the victim. Everybody knows that I was the victim in that political scenario. And everybody knows that my party went out of its way to deny me a certificate for no reason other than regional balancing, and to give it to her. And everybody knows that I did nothing while I had every capacity. And had I taken that case to IEBC, the certificate would have still been given to me. I restrained myself because of the bigger political picture. I said, let it be.
Was it worth it?
And I went out of my way still to even campaign for her. The best she can do is not to remind Kenyans of that very awkward scenario, because really, in the first place, I don't think she should have even accepted that nomination certificate in the first place.
And so here comes the question, was it worth it? This personal sacrifice that you're describing to me, looking back now, do you think you should have fought? Do you think you should have stayed the course, gone to IEBC, contested?
Let me just say this, and every good act is worth it. You don't have to have somebody pat you on the back to say thank you. You don't even have to expect it. But if your conscience is clear that you are doing something good, if you do something that is comfortable with your conscience and which is also not going against your beliefs, your faith, then it is worth it. So I feel that it is worth it because I am at peace with myself. I am at peace with everything. I mean, I just feel that what I did was the right thing, and what even followed when people realized that they had really gone to the extreme and then tried to hand me somebody else's place, and I refused, I'm at peace with it. I go to bed really feeling peaceful about that, and I always believe that everything happens for a reason, and that's why I don't always bring it out. I only respond because the person who actually was the main player who who allowed this to happen keeps talking about it everywhere. And while I want to forget about it, then I am forced to explain myself, and so it forces me to live that experience again. But I am really at peace with it. I think it was okay. I think there's always a second chance. I'm still in politics. 2 years down the line, we are still in a political process. I'm still going to be running for one position or the other. And so all is not lost.
So do we know what position you're going to be contending for?
Oh, I'm still considering. I'm still considering.
Okay, fine. So, I mean, it's interesting for me that you should say that, or that you should describe yourself as a victim, because in the political space right now, you come off as a matriarch in your party. Was this a sort of deliberate shift, or is this something that has happened over time?
I don't know. That description has actually surprised me. I didn't see it coming.
You wouldn't consider yourself as one of the top creme de la creme in ODM?
I don't know. I think
ODM
is a very big political party. I mean, still the most popular. And, you know, to say that any one person or any group of people should consider themselves as the ones controlling anything really is not true at all. What we are even trying to do right now is to try and decentralize our operations. Right from the elections board, we want to decentralize to the counties. And the new system that I think is workable for me is not to concentrate power in any one person or any group of people, or even in any one institution. We don't want everybody coming from all the counties to Orange House for every small thing. What we need is to decentralize even our elections, electoral board into, to have county electoral boards. We need to decentralize the secretariat in such a way that they have offices in all the 47 counties. We need a system that is so, you know, self-supporting, that doesn't have to make reference to any one institution within the ODM structure, or to any one person, or to any one group of people, self-appointed or otherwise. And that is why I want to shed off that kind of branding, because I want to see myself as just a one person in a big fluid system of structured system that plays a role equally with all the rest. Not more important than anybody from Turkana County or one of the wards, but a system that is interconnected in such a way that we are self-supporting.
All right. You speaking right now, as it sounds like you're a political purist or even an idealist, I dare say. Is it frustrating when some of these visions that you have don't come to fruition? I know you've just mentioned to me in terms of the nomination yesterday that there's some set ideals that you had, there's a way you expected things to go, and when it doesn't happen that way, what happens?
Let me just now force myself to go back to the Homa Bay situation. You know, it is very frustrating when you believe in a cause, when you believe in a party like ODM, when you know the political intrigues sometimes not wholly, and I don't want to pretend that I can ever know 100% of whatever is happening. But what I do know is this, that our opponents have infiltrated our structures, and I want to state that we have been having some problems with Homa Bay. You know that when we had this wave of even people attempting to introduce a new party by some strange name, Kalausi or whatever, again, it came from Homa Bay. And there are people who have made up their minds not to be in ODM for whatever reasons. And for them to create that political space to sell whichever new political outfit that they have, the strength of ODM must be brought down according to them. And one of the ways of bringing that strength down is by, you know, painting us in bad light at all times. For example, pretending to be in ODM and ensuring that you you don't allow any good process that we put in place, so that then you can go back to the people to tell them, listen, ODM cannot conduct any credible nomination process. You understand? Even when we tried now the delegate system, I mean, if you really now want to deal with the facts and issues, and you want to interrogate the process and why it failed, you will find that there must be somebody or a small clique of people who are pulling some strings from not within the party, who really are hell-bent on painting this very good political party in bad light, so that they create that political space. Because I don't understand. I have talked to people who attended the meeting, and eventually, in spite of all those lists, delegates went into that meeting place. They were seated. Everything was okay. They had their prayers, and then suddenly, all hell broke loose.
Right.
Now, this is why I'm stating very firmly that what we are dealing with in Homa Bay is a political process, and now that we have known and confirmed that every other system we try to put in place is being infiltrated, we are going to act like politicians. We are going to act like politicians. We have already called all the candidates to our headquarters. We are going to end up with a candidate. We are going to beat the deadline, and just watch this space. We are not now going to, we are going to remove all these kids' gloves and go the political process, because we know now we are really dealing with people who are hell-bent.
So the gloves have come off. It's now a bare-knuckle fight.
Bare-knuckle.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, let's go back to your personal life and your personal journey.
Yeah.
And when I said to a friend of mine that you're coming on set, she said, oh, wow, she's one of the really strong female politicians, and cited Millie Odhiambo as well. Do you find that you're judged by a different criteria from, say, your male counterparts?
I would say that, but I also think that the Kenyan, we are coming of age politically in Kenya, but talking about myself, I think anybody describing me as a strong personality maybe is not very far from the truth. Let me just tell you, when I went to Form 1, I was just about 11 years. I went to school early. So when I did my primary exam, and I managed to get a calling letter from 2 schools. One came from Alliance, one came from Maryhill Girls. My father was a catechist, so he insisted that I have to go to Maryhill.
That one was obvious.
So when I went there, and it was a high-cost school, I was there in Form 1. My uncle was paying. I was not able to be in school in Form 2 and Form 3 for that reason of school fees, which led to other reasons. And so I was out of school for 2 years. But I had made up my mind that I will sit the same exam with my classmates in the same year. So when I got a chance to go back to school, I went straight to Form 4. And actually, Millie Odhiambo was my schoolmate in Rangala Girls. I met her there. So we sat the same exam with my schoolmates.
This is for your O-levels now?
Yes. So for my O-levels, I was in school for 2 years. I did Form 1 and I did Form 4. But I still managed to make it to A-levels. We were the last group of A-levels. And so for me, that really tells you that it doesn't matter how old you are. You can find a young girl with a lot of mental strength, and you can notice it. And it doesn't matter. If you really want something in life, you will always get it. And I don't know what it is that I've really set out to do that I've failed to achieve. And I'm not saying that it is not, there's anything very out of the ordinary. But what I'm saying is that for any woman or for any person who sets out to do something, and you really work on it, and you remain focused, and you work on it with all your strengths, you will always achieve it. It might not manifest in the same way that you wanted, but you will always end up there. And I want to state that in my politics, I also don't believe that I should be a politician forever. I'm not going to be in politics forever. I want to be in politics probably for the next maximum 15 years.
A lot of people would say 15 years is long term. I thought you would say maybe 5 years.
Would that really be long term? I also don't think that you should quit when you are just maturing.
Right.
I don't think I have reached my political peak. But I also don't think that I will be there until another generation wants to push me out. No, I will want to be there until I feel that my political relevance is at its peak.
All right.
And then I will
Before we talk about some of the things you want to achieve politically, why don't we go back? What inspired you to join politics? I mean, everybody describes it as dirty, as not a place for ladies. What made you decide to throw yourself out on that field?
But I would also ask why they describe it as dirty and not a place for ladies, because it is political processes that actually determine and control almost 90% of everything else that we do, including what you do in the studio.
Right.
It is politicians who will sit in that legislative assembly and come up with motions, bills, and laws, legislations that will control even in the way that you will conduct your own business. And to which extent you can, actually now we are dealing with this bill,
the security.
Yes, the security bill that might also affect how you do you conduct your business as a in the media. So I don't understand why people do not want to get to where the coffee is brewed, rather than complain on the quality of the coffee.
So is that what happened to you?
Yes.
You were tired of taking bad coffee and you wanted to change this?
That is what happened to me. I was running my businesses, and it reached a point where I started feeling that certain legislations were not right, because I told you I had 3 very labor-intensive companies, and so that gave me a platform to deal with so many people. And I got to know their lifestyles, and I also come from a very poor background. And then I realized that so many years later, these people were dealing with the same issues that I was dealing with as a child. And so I said, why? How comes so many things are changing? But there's a category of people that do not seem to be impacted by these legislations, by these laws that everybody else seems to be enjoying. So I realized that I needed to do something different, and I found my way to politics, to the real issues, to the platform, to the negotiating table. And look what has happened since the last parliament. In the last parliament, we were only 15 elected women. And 15 elected women with 6 nominated, we managed to support and to talk to our male counterparts to support provisions in the Constitution that were really friendly, that created the 47 seats for women, that created the affirmative action, that now has given us women members in all assemblies, even in places where they are seeing a woman sit in that assembly for the first time since independence. Now, for me, that could not have happened if all of us women thought that politics was dirty, and we all reclined to the comfort zones, and then continued being subjected to all these social ills, because then there was no woman voice on the negotiating table. So we have to get somebody fight, for the rest of us. And I want to also thank women who were there before us, the category of Grace Onyango, Phoebe Asio, Niva Mwendwa, and then came the category of Mamangilu, and Martha Karua, and then these are the category of the 10th Parliament. And now see, I mean, when you look at the 11th Parliament today, You cannot believe that just about 10 years down the line, we were only just about maybe 10 in Parliament.
Yeah, just a handful.
And even with that increased number, it's just not the numbers. You can see this representation impacting the ordinary woman in so many ways, because we have so many voices now representing this.
Actually, just to put that into perspective, when you were the assistant minister in the Ministry of Nairobi Metropolitan, there were so many articles when you gave birth to your child, and they said it's history that someone in an elected office has gone to deliver her baby, because it was so rare, it was unheard of.
No, but now I was really, really so amused. I don't think it had never happened before. I think it was just a case that made every woman believe that you don't have to postpone being a woman because of your career.
Right.
And you also don't have to sacrifice your career because you are a woman. Actually, you can do everything at the same time. We are very good at multitasking. And I have friends who are really on top of their careers, but they postponed childbearing, and with serious consequences now. What you need to do as a woman is just be a woman. You don't have to go out of your way to rebrand. You don't have to apologize to anybody. We need people, we need corporates to know that when you have a woman in your organization, that she's a woman.
Right.
You don't have to expect her to behave like all the other males in the boardroom. She is a woman. She needs to have her children when she's still young. She needs to still be a woman. She's intelligent. She can be childbearing. She'll do all these things. And in fact, when that happened and then it went viral, and I received calls from women from all over the world, and some of them were like, wow, with this, I think I'm also going to have my child this year or next year. And I say, why not? I have not sacrificed anything. I've not lost my position. I'm still in politics. I have my baby by choice.
Yeah.
And I think it's just beautiful being a woman.
But did you feel the pressure to sort of bounce back and go back into the political arena? Because I remember you famously said, I only need 1 week and then I'll be back on it.
I didn't feel any pressure. I didn't feel any pressure at all. And I'm not pretending. Because even when I was not in politics, I had other children before. And I still went back to my office.
Yeah.
Again, not because of political pressure, and I was running my own businesses, but because I had so many things to handle in the office. But this happens to Mama Mboga somewhere, who gives birth to her child and then goes back out of pressure and out of need. It's only that nobody captures what she goes through, but she leaves her 2-week-old and goes back to sell mboga. It's just the same.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just doing what every other woman does.
So
it's only that it was a classic,
position.
Yes, it was just a classic example.
All right, but then do you think that it made you a soft target at that point, being pregnant, being female, being new in the political field? All these stories start emerging. Apparently you're buttering your husband. Apparently he's embezzling funds from CDF. How
that made me, yes, you know, there's one thing that happened, and later I realized I had also decided, because when I went into politics, I didn't really think that the media was very kind to women. And so what I did is that I completely blocked them out of my space. And for about 4 years, the media really tried packaging who this Elizabeth Ongoro was. And when they got a small avenue of opportunity in that propaganda, which, to be honest, I think as a family, that was the lowest point for us. It was so vile, so out of place. We ended up in court. I don't even know why it's taking so long for judgment for that defamation. And you can imagine, as I mean, for anybody who has been pregnant, I was already 7 months, though nobody knew because I was putting on big dresses. And when they realized what they had done, because I almost lost the baby because of the shock.
Yes.
It was I think I was 8 months. It was so bad. I went through so much trauma. I almost resigned my position. I thought if this is what it takes to be in politics, that somebody will just decide to print something so that now you can come out and, later. One of the media personalities told me that, at least we now got you talking. Actually, from that point on, I have really been engaging with the media. I said, we didn't just know who you were. You were so close. You don't socialize much. And when we printed that, of course, we realized it was, they apologized, but of course, they didn't give it as much coverage as
of course, an apology is not going to get as many viewers yes. or as many readers as
anyway,
the scandal itself.
By the way, I felt bad that time, but now I just look at it as one of those things that happens. I have seen people go through worse, and for somebody to accuse you, 8 months pregnant woman, battering a very, very physically fit man, it was so hilarious.
Okay, looking back at it now, having picked up the lessons which you mentioned to me earlier, would you have handled that situation any differently?
Yes, I would. I should have, instead of, but again, that was because of my physical condition at that time. I just got so shocked and I went into, I was actually sick. Yeah, but now I would have called for a press conference the very next morning and really, given my side of the story, maybe being right there to really answer all the questions, which I did not do. What I did was just really cry and really feel depressed and shocked. And because of what I was also going through, because I became a patient immediately. Immediately, I just saw that I became a patient. I was in the house. And I became a patient, my doctor was called, and I was also now handling the situation of even saving my baby. And so I think I should have handled it
Okay, but then for the women who are watching you now who are thinking, whoa, that is so much heartache, why would you want to keep doing this for another 15 years?
No, but who says I'm going to be pregnant again? Who says it's going to be another thing again?
Not necessarily with the pregnancy, but I mean the stories that are constantly emerging.
But now, okay, listen. Now that I've paid the price, why should I quit? It's like you are in an investment and it's only after you have given your ultimate that you should quit. No. Then I should have what? I should have now left the scene before all this. Now that I've paid the price, why would another woman come to walk the same path? I've already walked it. It's an open space. We must not close the doors that we have opened. Somebody will always have to pay the price. Even the political space we are occupying right now, there are women who went before us, who paid the ultimate price. They went through worse. When they share with us some of their stories, which maybe were not even captured, you actually cannot understand why they were in it. I was talking to Zipporah Kitonyi the other day, and she shared with us some of the experiences they went through in the 60s, in the 70s. And you look at her and you are shocked that why were you allowing yourself to go through that? But I would have asked that if I was not in this position. Because another woman, a younger woman, is asking, why is Elizabeth allowing herself? But then she must realize that I'm creating space for her. They created space for us. The price they paid was more painful than what you can even think of. We are now occupying this space. We have to widen this space for other people. We have to pay the price. Now, what we have already gone through, all this negative propaganda and everything else, I don't think another generation of female leaders will deal with it. No.
Let me go back to that, because you keep calling it propaganda, which suggests that, it's the hand of someone else.
Of course. Of course, I call it propaganda because anything that is malice, that is not true, that is packaged to malign you, and you know that propaganda is a political tool. You know that I was in a political contest at that time, and if all else fails, if somebody cannot find something against you, they have to package something. You will deal with it, yes, but it will have already served the purpose for which it was meant. And that is what I went through. I was in a political contest. I was upgrading myself politically from a parliamentary seat to a Senate seat. My political battles had to be upgraded. The kind of propaganda packaged about me had to be upgraded. It had to be something that appeals to a wider, community, and that talks to the male fraternity. This is a woman who is a very bad person, who should not be voted in. So it had to be something heavy, and that is what it was. To be honest, let me give credit to the person who packaged it, because he really communicated to a big, a big constituency at that point.
You're speaking as though you know this person specifically.
Let's not get into that. Let me just end at saying that I was a female, strong political contestant at that point, and in a male-dominated political field. The propaganda had to be something that painted me as a real woman, real bad woman.
And yet you survived.
Yes. Yeah.
And here you are today as a nominated senator, and you're saying that you see a situation where you'll be in politics for another 15 years. What's your plan? At least. What's the agenda after those 15 years? When your children go through the history books, when we go through the history books, what would you ideally want us to read about Elizabeth Ongoro?
I want you to look back and see the strengths that I brought out. I want you to look back and see the legislations that I was able to pass in Parliament and in the Senate. I want you to go through the Hansard and read my contributions and find substance in them. I want you to look at my entire life and see a woman who represented the woman, not just being feminine, but the woman, intelligent, being a strong leader, being there for the family, for her politics, for her career, just a real leader packaged in the body of a woman.
Okay, and so in the position that you're in, are you working on possibly legislation that is aligned to this vision?
Of course. Just recently, my motion in the Senate that supports a program for girls to be taken back to school, but not just taken back to school. I'm talking of girls, and we call it babies with babies. When you walk the slums of Nairobi and everywhere else, you find girls as young as 13, 12, 11. Those are babies, but they also have other babies. So I call them babies with babies. Now, if you want to help this category of women, what do? Simply stating that we have a policy that takes them back to school is not enough, because where does she leave her child? And maybe her mother does not have the capacity to take care of this child. In fact, I shared an experience that I came across in the slums of Korogosho of a generation of babies. I called for a youth meeting, and in that meeting, there was a 36-year-old woman, and she looked so old, and she was only 36, and she had her daughter in the same meeting, because I'd said I want to meet teenagers up to 37. That was a youth meeting. And so this lady was there, and her daughter, who was also there, was she was 36. Her daughter was it 20?
20?
22 or something. And the daughter had also a daughter in that meeting.
What?
Who was 12 with a 3-month-old baby. They were 4 generations of women.
That's scary.
So the story is, she came to Nairobi to look for school fees at 11 to go to Form 1, fell pregnant, gave birth. By 12, she had a child. So manual jobs here and there, had 2 other children, ended up in the slums, That baby she had at age 12 also had a baby. And that baby also had a baby at age 12. And now the 3rd generation was having a 3-month-old baby. Now, for you to break that vicious circle of poverty in that family, what do you do? As a government, as a legislator, as a nation. We need to come up with legislation that does not just take them back to school, but that provides welfare for the child. Because that is the only time that then this young baby, calling herself a mother at age 12, will be able to comfortably take her child for good upkeep and go back to school to get this very, very important key that will open these doors to life's goodies.
Okay.
Now, it's a very pathetic situation, but that is the reality that we deal with. We have had legislations before, but I think what is missing also is not just legislation, but the gap between legislation and implementation. We don't have a system.
Do you think this is a failure on the elected leadership, or do you think it's a failure on government?
Government. The elected leaders do their part. They come up with legislation. It is passed into law. And, you know, in many cases, one legislator maybe is there for one term, and does not go for a second term. It is not upon the legislator to implement. It is the government that has the machinery and the resources to implement legislation. So we have a lot of very, very good legislation that have been passed into law. But what is not happening is that we're not seeing the government implementing these legislations. And we even have penalties that are supposed to be, I don't know, executed by another arm of the government, which there's a very big missing link between legislation and implementation. Yes.
Okay, so as we wrap up, I always ask the politicians who come onto this set this question. If you were to rate yourself and the work that you've been doing in the time that you've been in office, what would you give yourself on a score of 1 to 10?
What would I give myself?
Yeah.
Nobody has ever asked that, and that's self-critique is the most terrible thing, you know. You will always overrate yourself or want to please people by underrating yourself. But I think on a scale of 1 to 10, I would give myself an 8.
An 8?
Yes.
That appears to be a very popular figure here. Well, Elizabeth Ongoro, thank you very much for making time to be with us. And for our viewers, do let me know, do you think she deserves an 8? Do you think she deserves more or less? And any other comments you might have on this specific interview. But that was a person of interest with Elizabeth Ongoro, the nominated senator, who says that she is more mature politically and she's not afraid to speak her